People don't develop based on starting axioms and building up as if they're philosophers attempting to mathematically derive all of existence. No, human behavior is pretty lumpy and inconsistent. So how should we develop, particularly as men? Now, I don't mean this to be exclusionary. If you find the concepts helpful, use them. But if you're actually offended that I made the distinction, well, you're not in my target audience. And honestly, I'm starting to think the best response to people being offended is public shaming. You can certainly be personally insulted, sure, but offended? There's something masochistic and self-injurious about that. That said, I do think the idea I'm going to present by itself excludes a traditionally feminine way of being, and sometimes you do have to make a choice. Just give me 2 minutes for the intro. Wisdom studies. Doesn't it say something about us that our universities are filled with the study of every kind of human group, whole fields of theoretical and practical science, but no actual study of wisdom? Even the field named after it, philosophy, philosophia, love of the goddess Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, has come to be dominated by an inhuman group of accountants trying to win some game of intellectual king of the hill by finding flaws in each other's ledgers. Solomon said wisdom stands on the street corners and shouts at us, but no one listens to her cries. But since life resists sterile accounting, Sophia has been driven off and retreated into the field of psychology. But this was no friendly home either. The practical applications and importance of unifying human understanding with human choices retreated into some back room and now hides in a closet of counseling. And even while there, she's still under assault and no one listens to her cries. I hope this series will be interesting and entertaining, but my main goal is to put human understanding back together again. Science, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, to begin to map out the path of a well-lived life. Because honestly, is there anything else that really matters? Long ago, when I was 14, I read Musashi by Ija Yoshikawa. I liked it so much, I read it once every summer well into college. I'm certainly not the only fan, as Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL commander, spent about 3.5 hours on his 100th podcast talking about the book in detail. Now, this is a fictionalized biography, but the actual Musashi wrote a real book that talks about some of the same ideas I'm going to get into. I'll leave a link to Jocko talking about that one. Now, I'd grown up in a traditional Christian family, and this book represented my introduction to Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and various forms of Asian philosophy. That led me to read the Tao Te Ching, and on almost every page I wrote a reference to a verse from the Bible that basically said the same thing, either directly or metaphorically. One religion was very structured and the other very unstructured, but both undeniably reflected the same versions of an external truth, a truth greater than simply, we interact with the same physical world. I couldn't have said it this way at the time, but one seemed to describe the figure, and the other described the figure's shadow. If so many similar statements can be arrived at coming from such different directions, then it must be the same thing that both books are referring to. I think the book Musashi changed my life more than anything else because from it and other Asian readings, I derived my first belief, almost an axiom. All art is art. Okay, I realize it doesn't immediately sound that profound, but it's somewhat similar to Ayn Rand's A equals A, and it could even be considered something similar to Plato's idealism. And since those are completely opposed viewpoints, it certainly gives us a little, space to grow in. Maybe we'll call it a practical tautology. Something true that we act out. Can there be such a thing as a practical axiom and something that we could build our lives on? Spoiler, yes. Point being, in the book Musashi, which is possibly different than the historical figure that the book is based on, the character says he wants to be an artist who paints with the sword. And part of this gets into a philosophic discussion where he calls the sword his soul. But the point is, he wanted to be an artist, and he was. The real person was considered one of the greatest martial artists in Japanese history, but he also took up painting with ink and a brush. He wrote poetry, attempted music, gardening, architecture, landscaping, farming, sculpture. He was a teacher, he was a writer, he engaged with philosophy and religion, and this was the real person. In the book, this is described as trying to find different ways to express his art.
To me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky, and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean, blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, that my friend, is very hard to do.
All art is art was a philosophic stance, but its practical application was learning is an art. Expressing yourself in the world takes the development of certain skills. Those skills are hard work, and they have to be learned over time. But only then do you express your art in this or that particular medium. What an interesting meeting of the practical, the social, and the spiritual. Enacted more than philosophic, you might notice. And I'll relate this to Jordan Peterson's lecture on how it is that playing the game is more important than winning the game. Because we need to learn how to play the game to play across different areas of specialty, to compete in multiple hierarchies, and to be interchangeable amongst those. But really, this is a question about learning how to learn and express ourselves within the confines of that particular field or that particular skill set or that particular art, which is also why I never liked non-rhyming poetry. You've given up on part of the hierarchy already. It is the confines and rules of that structure that let you express your skill or show you to be unskilled. Now, in case you think I've wandered off topic, no. Here's the point. Becoming an adult, man or woman, we must know ourselves. And we can only know ourselves by putting ourselves to a test. And we only create ourselves by ensuring that we have the skills to live up to that task. Rather than just continuing to live a doughy life and being shaped by the external world to take a challenge. He suggests taking up your cross like Jesus and bearing some responsibility. That's fine, but this path is not without its joys. When you are able to accomplish something, that can be a lot of fun. And what experiences might you end up missing if you're only looking for the next responsibility without appreciating and getting closure to the successes you can have? But mastering one hierarchy can teach you how to master others. And here is the life lesson that I later reformulated. There is only one skill, the skill to learn skills. And what's the point of learning a skill if you don't want to express something with that skill? Thus, art is art. Painting, combat, poetry, art is art. Social skills, philosophy, emotional regulation, everything is a development of skills and the application of those skills towards a goal that you've set, the expression of your values in the world. Art is art means the product of art is the application of art, the artistic process, the process of growth and development of the self on a hierarchy. As Plato said in the Republic, the art of basket weaving is to make better baskets. The art of sheep herding is to help the sheep. Likewise, even engineering and math may require an art, a recognition of elegance and a pursuit of it. Making the sword into your soul, like Musashi said, but really, taking yourself to the forge and allowing yourself to be remade. This way of being will aim towards improvement and mastery. It will engage in and try to become the best at the infinite game of mastering the self. If I were to objectify or idealize this, it would certainly sound a lot like Plato, but that's a mere imposition of an unnecessary layer of interpretation. In reality, the only skill to master is the skill of mastering yourself. Still, from coming to the conclusion that there is only one skill, I suppose I had no choice but to believe in the fractal nature of truth. This turns into quite a deep philosophic discussion that I'm sure you'll hear me talk about in future videos. But here lies the root of my concept of becoming a man. Many people say they want to experience everything life has to offer, but they just mean having experiences happen to them. No, I think experiencing everything that life has to offer is this: trying to master everything. Yes, it's a large and impossible task, but it really just means trying to master one thing, with a capital letter, art, which is also, with small letters, the art of mastering yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. But I'd really love a comment because I'm always interested in hearing new ideas and what people think about the topic. If you'd like a longer discussion, you can go to my Minds or Gab account and interact with me there. Also, donation is motivation.